So welcome back, y'all. Jason Michelle here, EKKOnesters. We've got Bad Betty with us. She is our 2022 Winnebago EKKO, built on that Ford all-wheel drive Transit chassis. If you've been following along with our channel, you know we love Bad Betty. We love making content. And the one thing I want to do is, if you're just now getting used to us or subscribing to our channel and you're kind of getting us figured out, just know we're about adventures, mods, tech tips, just having a good time and getting out there. The other thing that we do is we test some products that vendors or suppliers will send us just to kind of give it an idea, give our, let's call it our non-biased opinion. And so today, what we're going to be doing is installing a CaTuned off-road, well, I should say CaTuned's off-road skid plate. Now, as you're looking at Bad Betty, I'm going to back up and slow down a little bit. You're probably seeing that I'm sitting here hugging my favorite piece right here, which is my CaTuned off-road recovery bumper. Bad Betty also has a 12K Evo Warren winch. She's got the best Baja LP6, Baja design right there. She's got the European, I like to just call it the Raptor grill, but we can put a link and get into that later. She also has the Band Compass lift, and she's got the Wild Peak AT3s. Now, the reason I'm sharing all that with you is if you're not familiar with Winnebago EKKOs and you're looking at this, you're like, wow, did Winnebago just like go all out right here? Not necessarily, but a lot of folks out there in the industry have made a lot of parts, have been doing some R&D testing and putting some stuff out there, and we enjoy using it. So let's get down to the skid plate. There's a little bit of a segue here. When we think of a skid plate, or most people, I should say, think of a skid plate, and they see something like Bad Betty, and we just did this description, they say, well, you know what? Skid plate's probably not really for me. I don't take my EKKO or my RV or my Transit or my Sprinter off-road that much. I might do a little BLM off-grid camping, but I really don't get out there. I don't really see the benefit of it. That's where you need to hit the pause button and rethink right here. I spent about 15 years previous to my current career in the automotive industry, and it was working around Volvos. And one of the things that the Volvo product needed, especially when they came out with the ones with the cast aluminum oil pans, was a skid plate. Folks in their Volvos, as you can think, are not necessarily going out there tearing things up. They're just driving down the highway. They're handling their business to and from the grocery stores. But because of the cast aluminum oil pans, they were vulnerable. So I should say the company, developed a skid plate for it. As the years went on, they became a #1 seller, a top product for us. So when I think of skid plates, I don't think of them as necessarily just for an off-road experience. I think of them, I'm going down the highway, and Michelle would attest to this. Our previous, we like to call her Betty White, our Sprinter, we were actually headed down I-5 towards Eugene, and there was part of a tire, a big chunk of a tire, part of a retread of a semi. It caught up underneath, tore the underneath up, broke the whole front end, bent the step conversion. A lot of things went wrong just over that little chunk of tire. Now, had I had a skid plate, a lot of that damage would have probably been a little bit different or less impacting. Now, I didn't lose an oil pan. I didn't lose my motor, thank God. But as we're talking about the Transits and we're talking about what's exposed underneath there, we know that the Transits come with the Ford twin turbo V6. With that twin turbo, you've got an intercooler right underneath, and I'm going to show you this later. You've got intercooler pipes. You've got a lot of things going on underneath there that are exposed. Now, arguably, some people might say, hey, guess what? I feel like I've got a skid plate underneath there. I see this plastic dam. That's an air dam. It's not a skid plate. It's not designed to take big impact. It's designed to deflect air and to make it a little bit more aerodynamic. So as you're driving down the highway, the next time you're headed down there, look at everything that you could collect along the way that could find its way underneath. And if it does catch that oil pan, now the nice things about the Transit, before anybody starts catching me on this, is the oil pan is somewhat protected by the cross member. It's a little bit in there, but it is vulnerable. The other things that are not so protected are the intercooler pipes. Now, when we think about the intercooler pipes, somebody might say, well, what is the value of that if it hit? I'll just go get it replaced. Could it really impact me? It absolutely can. If you have a hole in your intercooler pipe, there's damage to it. What's going to happen is you're going to almost go into what's considered maybe a limp mode. You're not going to have the power, the vehicle's not going to perform as well, and you're going to immediately notice that there's something going on. The other thing is, if you get something just caught up just right, you hit that oil pan, you might as well kiss it goodbye. Motor's going to get lifted up, cross member, you're going to be putting a new oil pan in. So as I'm about to go through the installation process on this, and you have your own Winnebago EKKO, your Ford Transit, and you're starting to think, well, maybe I don't need one of these. As we go through the installation process and I bring you underneath, I'm going to show you the vulnerable parts, which include, especially on the EKKOs, is the additional alternator. It's very exposed down there. There's quite a bit of things I'm going to discover with you. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to find that you probably need to pick yourself up one of these. Again, CaTuned Off-road. You can pick one up at their website. You could probably even come to our website here shortly, and we'll have a link, and or we're going to be carrying the product. So I'm going to get started with bolting it on, and Michelle's going to swing the camera around, and we're going to talk about the tools. So stick with me. So one of the things that I was going to talk about is some of the tools, the equipment you're going to need, and about roughly how long it's going to take to install this. What I did before the video is I went through kind of a dry install. I was kind of lining things up, taking a look, so that at least by the time I got to sharing with you, as long-winded as I can be, as I could cut some of that wind down, as they say. So what you're going to get is you're going to get the skid plate here, and it's pretty light, as you see, but it's strong. And you're going to notice that there's an area here so that you can access your filter, your oil filter, and some other things if need be. The other thing that you're going to find in the package, besides a really cool sticker, is some spacers, very lightweight. You're going to find some washers, just like this. You're going to find some grade 8 hardware, lock nuts, bolts, etc. These are all going to adapt to a 3/4 inch ratchet, socket, open-end wrench, whatever you have. And you're going to get some instructions. Outside of that, you're not going to need much. The things that you're going to probably want to pick up, and this isn't branding anything, this just happens to be a Rust-Oleum product. It's a primer paint, because you're going to make a small notch, a small cut on each side. But I don't want you to be alarmed about that. I don't want you to necessarily go, oh my gosh, let's back out of that. Because whether you choose to do this install, if you feel like that's really the aptitude, or you've got time in your life to do it, or a mechanic does, at the end of the day, you're going to see it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. The other thing you're going to need is either some open-end wrenches and or a couple ratchets. You're going to probably, I brought this out just so you could scribe a perfect line, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to get there in a moment. You're going to need some sort of marking device, whether it's a pencil, a pen, a marker, a Sharpie, whatever works for you. You're going to need a 1/2 inch drill bit. This is actually where it kind of gets cool in a moment. And I just happen to have an extra drill bit as my starter bit. It just kind of makes my drill look a little, or I should say work a little easier. You're also going to need some sort of tool to modify. Remember that plastic shroud I was talking about? You're just going to make a small notch around that. It's pretty straightforward. Mine has been removed previously because I've got the big bad CaTuned bumper on here. And you're going to need a grinder of some sorts. Now, let's say that you're looking at these tools and you feel a little bit intimidated, and of course a torque wrench, which I would invite you to pick one of these up and just keep them in your rig, because if you do get a flat tire, you need to change it. It's always nice to get the right torque value down on that. And of course, some safety goggles, some gloves. I would suggest probably a long sleeve shirt. I'm not bothered by a couple of things hitting me. You probably wouldn't want to wear shorts. Maybe you do. It's nice and hot out here, but you want to follow basic safety procedures. So when you open up the package, like I said, you're going to get some hardware, a skid plate, a really cool sticker, and some instructions. Then you're going to come out to your rig, and or your mechanic is, and you've got a couple choices here. After you've put it in park, you've made sure that you've chalked the wheels, it's not going to roll, you feel safe about it, and you feel like you're comfortable getting underneath there with or without some wheel ramps. That's where the fun's going to kind of start. Now, if you have a lift, you have to be one of those guys that has a really cool garage, and I've seen some of you on Facebook, and I am jealous. I am jealous. My buddy Doss has a couple lifts. Doss, if you're watching, you know what I'm talking about, baby. So, and outside of that, you're not going to need much, just a little bit of confidence in yourself. So what I want to do before we get started, as you can see, this is pretty light. We're talking really light. So don't be intimidated by that. You'll find that in the instructions, it might be suggested that you use a floor jack or some sort of wheel jacks, something. But again, I think it's light enough to work with it. And I found kind of a little routine to make it happen. So one of the first things, you might even notice the pad I have down here. Amazon, Home Depot, whatever. They're just little gym mat pads. You get a whole pack for like 20 bucks, smoking deal, and they make things nice and comfortable. So you got your tools set up, you got your safety goggles, your gloves, etc. One of the things you're going to do is you're going to kind of swing underneath. So what I'm going to do, this is where Michelle gets to play underneath the vehicle with the camera. So, Michelle, let's bring them on underneath here. All right, you can cut the camera while you crawl under here if you want. So if you made it this far in the video, I'm super grateful. Our producer's under here, Michelle, the camera person. She runs all aspects. She's the show. So I talked about our intercooler pipes. What you can see here that I'm tapping on, this is your intercooler pipe. And as you can see, that is a I'm going to refer to it as more like an ABS type plastic. You'll also notice that you've got some other components to your intercooler system here. You've got an alternator. This is the secondary alternator for your lithium package, the Baumar, if you will. And you've got some fan shrouds here. And then if we look right back into here, remember I said arguably this oil pan is somewhat protected by here, this cross member. So I don't want to fool anybody. But outside of that, you've got this entire area exposed. And again, we're talking about a chunk of a semi-tire, a retread, garbage, debris, everything that hits a highway coming up in here, whatever speed you're traveling, clipping and potentially taking this stuff out. Now, what's interesting about that conversation, and I started touching some stuff up earlier, and I shouldn't have done that when I was under here, just to show you, there was evidence, if you will, of different impact zones between here, the intercooler, right here on this lower cross member. I should call it this, I don't know the proper term, but we'll just call it the radiator retaining plate, if you will, and just some areas. So that already made me concerned, and that's just us just driving down the road. So the other thing that you're going to notice, I'm having Michelle come on over here because this is going to be the important part, is you got a frame rail right here. And I don't know how easy I make it on Michelle to follow my hand, but you're going to see 1 hole, 2 holes, and 3 holes. What's interesting is I feel like Ford may have planned for the idea of having a skid plate because we're actually going to utilize these 2 holes. One is completely drilled through. I'm going to grab a bolt just to show you. Right here. This is the one at the front. And again, we'll go over this slowly. That one goes all the way through, and then this one stops. But they're lined up perfect for our skid plate. So I'm almost thinking Ford had an idea that might be an option or an aftermarket idea, because just to randomly put some holes, I don't know. I wasn't the engineer, not sure why, but I don't think it was a strength issue. But we're going to be utilizing these holes. The one thing that we're going to do, and I'm just going to grab it as a, just kind of a show and tell, if you will, is, remember I talked about the need for a 1/2-inch drill bit? Now I was talking to Max, and Max might actually include just a little version of one of these with the kit to make life easy on you. Right, Max? So stay tuned. He probably just loves me right about now. So again, this hole is passed through all the way. The second hole was already here, but we need to drill all the way through it. So what we're going to be doing is demonstrating drilling that all the way through. Now, don't be nervous. This is part of the frame rail. You're not going to damage or hurt anything. And again, after you're done, just because you've exposed a little raw metal, you're going to put a primer protector on there. Some folks choose not to do that. It takes you a couple seconds to spray it. It's a $5 can. I mean, $5 worth of insurance, right? And you're going to be drilling these holes on each side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the drill set up. We're going to crawl back underneath here. I'm going to get my safety goggles on. I'm going to hand Michelle a set for her and her camera. And I'm going to show you how we're going to drill this out. So stick with us. Let's get some tools. So one of the things you want to make sure of is that you have a right and a left glove. That happens by your thumb location. I actually had 2 right gloves, so we're going to toss that one aside. I got so much equipment and gloves here. All right, so you got your gloves on, you got your safety goggles on. In theory, you have a long sleeve on because you don't like little metal shrouds or pieces flying on your skin. And you've got your drill, any brand. Doesn't have to be a Milwaukee, although Milwaukee, if you're watching, I wouldn't mind, you know, some new tools, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and I always start with a little starter bit. This happens to be a 3/8. Then I've got my 1/2 inch, because again, we're drilling a 1/2 inch through just one of the holes on each side of the frame rail. One of the holes is already there. You're just going to let it be your guide so that this slips through. So Shell's going to crawl back underneath with her safety goggles and everything, and we're going to get started. So I don't have my safety goggles on right now because I'm not drilling, but I want to show you. I just happen to be on the passenger side. It's identical passenger and driver side where we're talking about on this frame rail. So when you're up towards the front, again, we're on the passenger side. Let's just call it where your reservoir is here for your washer fluid. You're going to see our first hole. That hole is already drilled all the way through, and I just missed it. I'll just kind of show you. Just goes right on through there. No problem at all. Sorry about the noise, y'all. And this hole is drilled partially through. So what we want to do, second hole back, and I'm going to tell you how you're also going to know. When you count the holes, there's 1, 2, and 3. If you even tried to do it in reverse order, this hole is oval. This one is a perfect cylindrical hole right here. And this one's cylindrical. So it's almost like even if you work backwards, you can't screw up. At least I hope you can't. So you're going to get your safety goggles on. You don't necessarily have to start with a pilot bit. That's what I'm going to call the smaller one, but I'm going to. And in this case, because I'm going to do this, I'm just going to line it up dead center right there. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's on drill, and I'm going to use speed 1 to start with. You want to kind of get that bit just turning at a slower rate, and it's just going to cut through nice and clean. So we're going to make some noise here for a moment. So plug your ears, y'all. And it's already starting to work its way through. And here in just a second, we're going to pop right through. I can kind of feel it. I don't know if you guys can see any of that metal kind of working down. Oh yeah, it's starting to work. And then what I'm going to do just for my own purpose is I know I got a bite. I'm going to put it on 2 to speed, and we're through. That simple. Now again, I took that at a slower rate. Usually I'm a little bit more of a Captain Caveman on things. But we're doing a video. Now I'm going to switch to my 1/2-inch metal drill bit here. And I'm going to lock her in. Still got the safety goggles, gloves, feeling protected, vehicles chalked, blocked, you name it. We're going to go ahead and go straight in here, same hole. We're going to fill it bite, make sure we're back on 1. Again, we want a slow drill here. And while you're doing this, I want to let you know too, depending on what drill you have, there's torque on these. It could twist your arm. Again, if you're at this stage, you're doing great. If it's something you don't want to do, you can show your mechanic how easy this is. Oops, I didn't have it on drill. There we go. There we go. Now it's nice and clean. The thing I should probably point out, and I should have done this earlier, as you're looking at this, we don't have anything interfering. Now, if somehow you drilled at a crazy angle, you could potentially hit one of your radiator hoses or intercooler pipes. And as you saw, there wasn't much debris that fell out, but we do want to use our safety goggles. Something to keep in mind, you're going to have little metal shrouds on the ground, so you might get yourself a little broom or vacuum, clean that up. You'd think that I'm hitting about everything I could here. Now, this is where we're going to use our little spray paint here. And you could put a mask on if you so choose. And what I do is I just drift a little there. And now that hole was existing. The reason I'm doing that is I probably nicked that a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up towards the top side here where you see. And I'm going to show Scooter camera back so we don't ruin the iPhone, right? And we're just going to give it a little dusting. A little bit more there. We'll wait about 10-15 minutes. It's really hot here. This stuff dries pretty quick too. And then we're going to come back and we're going to show you all the next step. So one of the things that you're going to need, or your mechanic's going to need, is a grinder or equivalent with the cutoff wheel here. As you can see, I just happen to have a cordless version. That thing will hurt you. Now this is the easy cut in my opinion. Michelle's going to swing underneath here. So we're, again, still on the passenger side, and I'm going to switch my glasses so I can see here. Sorry. And you're going to notice towards the front here, and I'm going to swing underneath just to kind of help out, that you've got these 2 little divots, one here and here. That's going to be your reference point. Again, this is in the instructions. And remember, we've got this plate that kind of protects and surrounds part of the, well, not the intercooler, but the radiator, etc. Now, I'm going to pivot back out. And the pen/pencil, you can use a scribe, you can use any kind of marker that you want, but you're just basically going to make a little angle line. And that's what this really was for, in case you really are just wanting to be really perfect about it. So you're going to scribe a line right across there. And then when you get to the back, you're going to see there's a little divot here, this nice little notch. It's a good guide for you. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to line it up, and you're just going to scribe. There's no real structural integrity to this. This isn't like carrying the weight of anything, but we need to just get a little bit of a nip on it right here to get it out of the way for our skid plate. So what we're going to do is take our grinder. So I'm going to have Michelle scoot her camera back so we don't burn the screen. And I'm going to begin to make the cut. All right, y'all ready? So you are going to see some little metal shards or shavings coming around. I was talking about earlier that you could use like a floor jack if you're elevated, you've got a lift, whatever. There's a lot of other options that are going to make this a little easier for you. But I wanted to kind of demonstrate, hey, you're in your driveway at home. It's a little couple hour. It's not even a couple hour. It's like an hour project. And you want to just take care of things. What would you do? What I found worked for me is got my pads down. I've got my pretty lightweight skid plate right here. We should probably talk about how we know what direction it's facing. When you get your skid plate, the rubber guard here, this piece that you see right here, is going to face towards the front. You'll also notice that this skid plate ramps. It's narrow here and it widens up. The widest part goes towards the front. Now, we were talking about hardware earlier. We've got our bolts. That's pretty straightforward. It's going to go through our through drill area. We got our lock nuts. We've got our spacers and our washers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take my bolt washer, line it up right here. That's fine. I'm going to get my lock nuts ready. And I'm going to lift this up. I'm just going to kind of rest it on me. I'm comfortable with that, but I would say do what you think is best for you. And I'm going to scoot on underneath here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spacer and have it ready. I'm going to put it, can you see that at all, Michelle? Right here on our very first hole, just like that. So I've got my bolt, my washer, my spacer, and my bolts coming through. And we're going to go through this first hole right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get back underneath it like I was talking about. And I want to push that bolt right through there. And then because, again, I'm only just cinching things down just for the purpose of getting things lined up, I'm going to take my nut and I'm going to put it right on top here just to give it a little bit of snug. Now, until you tighten this, just remember this could still drop out on you, okay? The other thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my other bolt, my spacer and my washer. Again, bolt, washer, through, spacer, just like that. And I'm going to line it right up with that hole. This again is the middle hole where we pre-drilled it. And I'm just going to go ahead and push my bolt through. It's laying right on my stomach or my chest, if you can see that. So it makes it pretty easy. And I'm just going to use my finger to guide it. You might have to wiggle it around a little bit. Again, this is because I'm laying on the ground, just demonstrating how it's going to go, and boom, it pops through. So we're going to switch to the other side here in a sec. What I've done is I got my bolt, my washer, and my spacer, and now I'm just giving the lock nut on top. I don't know if Michelle can pan that camera up here, right up top here, just like that. And I'm going to just let this rest on my belly. Again, I'm comfortable with that. And I'm going to come over to my other side where I staged all my hardware again. So it goes bolt, washer, just like that. And we've got our spacer. So it doesn't matter which hole we start on this side. And we're just going to put that on through. Whoops, sorry. Almost forgot my spacer. Spacer goes between the frame rail and the skid plate. I'm going to go ahead and get that to go right through. I'm going to grab my lock nut. Again, I'm just going to hand tighten this for right now. At the end, we're going to torque this down to 35 foot-pounds. But for now, whoops, I'm just going to go ahead and secure it. And there we go. Just kind of hand tighten it. And we'll go to the most forward bolt, which is by the front bumper. Again, as you guys can see, this is really, really straightforward. Line it up. And you'll notice that I've left everything a little loose. The reason that you don't want to tighten everything right now is as you're placing the skid plate and you're kind of getting it familiar with where it's going to lock down, you need a little bit of wiggle room for that. If you cinched everything up immediately, then in theory, you would probably have to unbolt some stuff. So now that I've got it suspended and hanging, again, I'm not trusting that this can come down on me because I haven't secured my nuts. I'm going to go ahead and grab my ratchets, and we're going to get to that part. So stick with us just a second. Got my 2 ratchets here. I got my 3/4 socket on each one. My first ratchet I'm going to place up on top here where my lock nut is. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that. I hope you can. And then I'm going to begin to cinch this down. You'll notice as I'm cinching it, they'll start to make contact here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snug it, and I'm going to work my way around, kind of like if you're tightening up the tire on your wheel, where we're just going to kind of work our way around. And I got that right there on my nut, my lock nut, if you will. Again, I'm on top of the frame rail with this one. And I'm just going to cinch it down. Make sure your head's not in the way so you don't clunk yourself and end up like me. It's going on nice.
Yeah, it looks good. Look at that.
I'm actually pretty excited. So we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to tighten up this side. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten them all the way to 35 foot-pounds. So I'm going to have Michelle swing around, and we're going to repeat the process. So we're repeating the process again. Now, the one thing that some people might do is they might use an impact driver, and it'll go a little faster. That's definitely your choice. I do have that tool, but I figured, you know what? Let's just use the basic tools here and make it happen. So I'm snugging that up. Again, I know it's nice and loud, you guys. Sorry about that. And then we're going to do the same thing to the front nut and bolt. Snug it up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and go around them and check them. And then I'm going to break out my torque wrench. Now the thing to bear in mind is, let's say you don't happen to have a torque wrench and you got this far. Check a neighbor out, a friendly mechanic, maybe even swing by one of your gas stations and say, hey, did you guys torque these down? I'll buy you a hamburger, a cheeseburger, a taco, or something nice. And I bet you somebody would help you out. So I'll finish this up, and we'll set our torque wrench, and we'll get her done. We have our ratchet. Again, you could be using an open-end wrench, but I'm just using it to lock on and secure up here. We now have our torque wrench right here, which I just lost my, oh, there it is. And we've set our torque wrench to 35 foot-pounds. And now we're going to go ahead and torque it down. So we're going to wait for it to click here in a moment. Make sure it's on there nice and tight. There we go. There we go. Okay. Gonna make sure that we're getting a good bite there. So what I ended up doing is just grabbing my open end, or I'm sorry, my crescent wrench. You could use an open end wrench just because I didn't want to go grab my deep socket. And I locked it on there. I'm gonna get my torque wrench on here. And I don't know if you guys can hear that. You hear that click? That means we're torqued to 35 foot-pounds. So we're wrapped up on this part. Now let's talk about the importance of this, what we did, and recap, y'all. Let's do it. All right, y'all. So this is where we do a really quick recap. We're just going to talk about the basic tools you're going to need. You're going to need a drill. You're going to need a 1/2-inch drill bit to go through metal. If you so choose, like I did, a little starter bit. This happens to be a 3/8. Scribe pen, pencil, marker, anything so you can make that line where you need to make the cut. Not necessary, but kind of helps out with the angle. Some sort of Rust-Oleum style paint and or primer, all in one is what I use. Gloves, safety goggles, if you so choose, long sleeves, boots, pants, etc. Ratchet socket, either 19 millimeter or 3/4, both worked fine in my case. Sure, somebody's willing to argue that little small increment, but that's fun. Torque wrench, either you have one, your buddy has one. I happen to pick this up out of all places, Harbor Freight. I think it was a whopping 30 bucks. And I'm going to be able to torque my my tires as well. Crescent wrench and or open end wrench. So when you're at your front bolt and you don't happen to have a deep socket, you can lock on when you're doing your final 35 foot-pounds of torque. You're going to need a grinder. Be familiar and comfortable using one of these with a cutoff wheel, any particular brand that you're comfortable with. And when you're going to trim the plastic shroud, again, mine was removed. One of the, well, we'll just call it one of these multi-purpose tools will work very ideally So let's also talk about why you'd want one of these. Again, I stressed in the very beginning, it is not about having recovery gear, a lift kit, big tires, and getting off-road in the beaten path. It's about protecting the undercarriage and the bottom of your chassis from things like chunks of tires, retreads, things that people drop and lose off their vehicles. Standard highway. Next time you're going down the road and you're traveling down any highway, you look at all the debris that's on that road. If it swings up, catches the underside of here, it hits your oil pan, hits your alternator, your belts, your intercooler tubes, you're going to be pulling over pretty quickly, and you're going to be calling for a recovery vehicle, a tow truck, etc. And your vacation and or experience is going to be modified. So get yourself a skid plate. I think they're about $780, shipped directly to you, hardware included, straightforward installation. I did this right here in my driveway. As y'all can see, we don't have anything fancy. Pick yourself up some of these. I'll leave a link on Amazon and or your favorite box store. Makes everything simple. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, anything you see could be different, get it done. Oh, last but not least, you can always use a little Loctite on your nuts and bolts there. I didn't show that. We were way past that point at the time, but a good piece there. And I think that we'll just call that a wrap outside of, hey, let's go underneath. Get these tools out of Michelle's way. Let's look at how pretty it is. You see that? Access right here to your oil filter, fully protected. We no longer have our alternator, our belts, our intercooler. None of that is now exposed. That means that if something comes flying up down the road and goes ahead and starts tagging the underside of here, that we are fully protected. I've got zero concerns now. And again, that is not from needing to do an off-road or getting off the beaten path experience. That is literally me driving down any interstate and something comes flying, because we know what happens. It happened to our Betty White over there, and she got taken out, but we put her back together. But it's not something you want to do. So thanks for watching our channel and hanging out with us. And appreciate it. Have a good night, good day, good morning, wherever you're at in the world.